to the metal when I'm getting to the bag, ayy. Got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast, ayy, ayy. Let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve, so you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I got a guest. I'm going to bring him up here shortly. Just a quick reminder, though, our weekly newsletter dropped this morning, you guys. I don't auto-sign anybody up for it. Go to thefreightcoach.com. It will auto-prompt you to go and register for it. It's growing. It's kind of wild what just starting and doing it every single week does. The subscribers are adding to it, you guys, so get on it. It's all industry news. We're doing a little bit of fuel report on there. We're doing some rates as well for people to start tracking. But most importantly, you guys, it's all going to be about freight, because frankly, you guys, that's all I know. All right. I don't know much else about anything. So, but with that being said, I got a very special guest for you guys here today. This is one of the AI companies that I'm really high on long term. I've talked to some buddies of mine who use their product. They come from the industry, and I'm excited to talk about this and building up a company like that inside of the industry. So I got Mr. Paul Singer on the show with FleetWorks. Paul, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris.
No, dude, you're literally live from the floor at Manifest right now.
Yeah.
Well, not from the floor, but you're in Vegas. You're out there. You guys got everything going on. So, dude, how's that going, man?
Yeah, we were kind of talking before the show. The reception on the show floor has really kind of completely flipped. It's no secret that we were really one of the first to be in the space, to really be building in AI for brokerage, for logistics companies. I remember our first show is maybe about a year and a half ago. First of all, we had, of course, no name brand recognition. You know, people, when I started to ask people about it, what they thought about what we were building, asking them for feedback, pretty much the feedback was categorically no. And it's funny that we actually kind of shook hands on a pretty large deal that we're basically like, we're going to be drying the ink on that pretty soon in the next couple of days, and not able to share more. But someone that I've gotten to know really well over the industry, he was one of the first people to actually tell me no about this product. He said, hey, AI can never talk to carriers. Carriers will never take it. And really the feedback here has completely flipped, right? Like we've got this deal signed. We have more, of course, coming down the pipeline. But the feedback from our customers, as you know, has been really positive. And as Kyle and I are walking the floor, folks are just grabbing us and saying, hey, like, we've been looking to meet with FleetWorks. We reached out to you guys last week, or folks that we've been talking with for a couple weeks, couple months. And this is our chance to really meet in person. So it really feels like the market has come to us in a lot of ways. By being first in the space, we've built a product that really is great for brokers, but most importantly, just super carrier first in everything we do. We can kind of go into what that means and why, but the show's been great, all to say.
No, that's awesome, man. So like, dude, I think like I'd like to take this kind of spin on it, right? Because it's like AI has about as much free marketing as imaginable right now as like a whole, right? Like everybody in every industry is seemingly talking about it. And there's been a lot of, push for automation for a while now in transportation, but like what's been the main pushback, man? Like I want to go out there and kind of take this angle about you guys building your company, kind of like what made you start, Paul, and then kind of like what are some of those early obstacles that you guys have had to kind of overcome here?
Yeah, so I've been in brokerage now for counting FleetWorks, been doing brokerage for about 7 years. So I started at Uber Freight, led small carrier strategy at Uber, ultimately ended up leading small carrier product. So a lot of the products that I designed and led the team that built are still kind of helping run Uber Freight's brokerage today. So for example, Uber Freight's entire performance management is completely automated using automated loyalty incentives, both positive incentives and negative incentives for carriers. So that's how Uber manages 100,000 carriers without even talking to them. But we also built like really interesting features like facility ratings and reviews, dwell time notifications for facilities, so carriers sort of can know what to expect when they book a load. So when I was at Uber, I really just fell in love with building products and figuring out how to empower kind of the small carrier. Like the small carrier is kind of the lifeblood of this industry. Everyone knows it. And of course, rightfully so, there's a lot of emphasis on fraud and preventing fraud. But I think it's also important to remember that, hey, 99% of the guys in the space are really just honest, hardworking people who want to provide great service and want to make a living doing it. Of course, that we need to do things to prevent that 1% from spoiling the other 99. But that's really what gets me up in the morning is hey, how do we help small carriers become more successful? That really led to the idea behind FleetWorks. So as my co-founder Kwong and I, we were sort of spinning our wheels at the startup incubator, Y Combinator's famous incubator out of Silicon Valley. And we were realizing, hey, some of our first ideas were not working well. Which is, I think a lot of founders are going to resonate with that, right? Like you try something or you try 10 things and none of them are working. You're in what's called pivot hell. You feel like you've lost all purpose in life. And a lot of folks have been there and it's a tough place.
Yeah.
But we were thinking about my time at brokerage. And despite really all the amazing automation that we had built at Uber Freight, when you still looked at the floor, it still looked in many ways like a traditional brokerage. You had people answering emails, you had people scheduling appointments, you had people picking up phone calls, you had people making phone calls. And we realized that for the first time in history, really, technology had caught up to that problem in the form of large language models. So large language models, you can effectively, one of the things they're really good at is turning sort of unstructured information, like a phone call transcript or an email, into structured data. And we've seen so many AI companies come into the space. Our approach really has been, and will continue to be, how can we better connect the broker and the carrier using AI? And when it makes sense, how does AI get out of the way so that humans can continue to develop great relationships? That's sort of the history behind the company. We connect brokers and carriers over phone, over email, over text message. Carriers really like it because they don't have to wait on hold anymore. They get all their questions answered, and they can even book loads with our AI. Brokers, of course, like it because we're saving them a lot of time and money. Individual brokers on the floor quickly realize that FleetWorks is actually their best friend. We're not taking business away from them. We actually help them book more with relationship carriers, spend less time talking with carriers who just aren't serious about booking their freight.
No, I'm right there with you, Paul. And, a couple of my buddies who, use you guys and some of the examples that I've heard, I honestly never had thought about it in this situation with the, you're right in the sense of like, there's a lot of quality carriers that are out there, like that 99%, but like that 1% that does come through, or, the people who are the bad actors who are out there trying. What, a couple of the specific use cases that I heard about is like, hey, these guys are weeding out a lot of those guys from even talking to the carrier reps, right? So when they're utilized FleetWorks, if they call in, they get the MC, they can tell like, oh, hey, this carrier is denied, or, maybe it's a carrier that called in, there was a stolen load or unpaid claims or whatever it is. They stop them from even wasting the carrier rep's time. And I was like, damn, that's actually a really good idea from it, because, you know, the amount of times that I've booked loads throughout my career, and, you know, maybe you make the mistake of not asking for the carrier's MC right away. You go through this huge spiel, you get the load covered, then you pull up their MC and you're like, damn, you guys are denied. And then, you know, so you wasted all of that time. And, you know, so it's like, I think like there's a gradual, I don't want, like, resistance is the word that comes to mind, but I know it's not right. Where it's like people are being less and less resistant to it because they can start seeing the gaps inside of their operations, where it's like, damn, how great would this be to have a tool like that where I can keep my people productive and working, as opposed to fielding inbound calls on a hot lane, you know, Atlanta to Chicago, and you get your phone bricks, you get 100 inbounds at the exact same time.
Yeah. I think that's right. I mean, we kind of talked, you were sort of asking, hey, like what's been the pushback and what's been that journey from, I would say, like non-acceptance, or maybe even just the simplest way to put it, of not having product market fit to having product market fit. So, you know, when we first started, I would be kind of the first one to say that our product just wasn't very good. But we had a lot of confidence that it can get better. So I'll talk about what didn't work well and why we thought things would work. So when basically everything was not good. So the voice quality was pretty robotic. You know, the pauses and the time it took to respond to carriers was really long. The ability for the AI to sort of reference relevant information at just the right time is something that we call tool calling. So the ability to basically pull load data and respond to questions was pretty poor. We saw really low success rate there. So those are kind of three things that we felt like were pretty bad. Given the pace of our own personal development and the development of the underlying tech, we felt like those things could get solved. And that bet was correct. Like, I think the right bet to make in AI is just AI is getting better. But the thing that gave us a lot of confidence beyond that it was going to work was, I was telling Andrew Silver this story not too long ago. So when we first started, we found a load board, and I forget the name of the load board. It was kind of like a really like not a famous one. It had no fraud checks, and anyone could post any freight on there. And so what we wanted to do is we said, hey, let's post 3 loads on lanes that we know are going to blow up the phones. And let's see what the carrier experience is like, right? And we're going to run this one-day experiment. So we posted those 3 loads. 2 of them got calls. We got 3 calls in total. And all 3 of those calls, I would say, like, the carrier went through the full call and talked to the AI. And on one of them, despite how bad the tech was, the carrier didn't even know they were talking to AI. They just thought they were talking to like a really bad carrier rep. We listened to the call, and we could tell the carrier was like, hey, why aren't you understanding this? So despite, like, the product was terrible, but we saw that the carrier experience could get there. And so that once we did that, we spent the next 4 or 5 months really kind of developing it out, making sure that it was like a stable product and something that was production ready. And then we, came out to market. Again, the first people who saw it were like, still like, hell no. We were able to find, I think, just a few people who really took a risk on us as founders. Like, not even, they're like, we really like you. The product, we're a little bit like, we're a little bit 50-50 on it, but we really like you guys, and we see that you're going to like bust your ass to make it better. So we'll give you guys a try for a couple months. And those customers, John Ackerman at Capstone, I think one of the earliest guys to take a risk on us. And obviously, we've kind of paid back that trust a lot over time, but we really would not be here in general without those early customers in particular. So big hats off to them.
So with this, is this mainly designed to take inbound calls? Like, we're not at a point where it's starting to call posted trucks on any load boards or anything like that. This is primarily set up where if I post Atlanta to Chicago for a drive-in, now this is where you guys would step in and kind of run that transaction.
No, so we do outbound calling. Okay. So we do outbound calling on posted trucks or any other type of outbound call that our customer needs to make. We see a lot of power on the inbound side, of course, but outbound is working really well. Carriers are negotiating with the outbound AI. They're telling it what they want to book. We're selling them multiple loads on those calls. We're doing track and trace for customers. We're doing document retrieval. bread and butter of what we do, I think, is really going to be inbound.
Okay. No, for sure. And I think like that's, you know, I look at it as a lot of companies are, you know, at least when I'm out there covering freight and when I've covered freight in the past, especially on some of those power lanes, when you're getting a ton of inbound calls at the exact same time and fielding all of that. And how do you know that the right truck for that load was even talked to, right? And then it's kind of going and setting those parameters up. I think it's crucial, right? And I think a lot of people, you don't think about this in the moment when you're booking, because like you might have found that, you know, the truck that fits for that price at the end of the day, right? But maybe one of these carriers that were out there that called in ran that lane every single day of the week. And just because you found the right carrier, it might have been the right one for this load, but what about the next 10, 15, 20 that you're running? Because that's the way that I like to operate as a broker, right? Because I'm doing both, right? Like we're primarily cradle to grave. We're a startup. We're doing cold calls to shippers, but we're also booking all of our own freight and everything else. And I'm like, I want the right carriers out there, because our whole business model that's been successful is we use the same trucking companies time and time again. We've identified the right carriers for those lanes for the long term. So it's like, if we had 10 loads dropped on our plate today, we can actively cover them with the right drivers for those shipments. And I've been in the opposite position of that though, right? Where it's like, I found a carrier who worked at one time, but then we couldn't find any carriers for those lanes long term. So it's like, I think like from a data collection standpoint and everything else that comes along with it, knowing who to reach out to for the next one is just as important as, is this the right truck for this shipment today?
Yeah, I think that's right. So, you know, maybe I think about this company kind of in phases. So phase 0 was saying, hey, can we get a couple brokers on the platform, right? Can we even convince anyone to use us? Phase 1 was was scaling that. Phase 1 was saying, hey, how do we make this better? How do we make this more fully featured? How do we make this more self-serve? And phase 2, to your point, is really, hey, how do we help people get smarter on their data? Brokers are sitting on amazing pricing data, lane preference data. On the flip side, carriers want to occasionally work consistently with brokers where it makes sense. And you know, carrier reps are often really busy, right? Like they can't always do carrier development on every phone call, right? Because they've got to go cover the next load, or they've got to go put out a fire that's happening, you know, on the load they just covered, right? Like there's so much on a carrier rep's plate. So we think about the AI as sort of helping the carrier rep just be really diligent, follow the SOP every single time, but also help them collect data that helps them connect more with carriers, helps the brokerage become more successful, drives, you know, the right rate for the market, drives the right service outcome. Those are really all the ways that we partner with our customers to try to help them grow. And our goal with FleetWorks, really kind of our big audacious goal, is to help the FleetWorks brokers win the market. And we fundamentally believe that if we are successful in completing all of the missions and tasks that we know we need to do, if you are a FleetWorks broker, you will outcompete a broker using another AI platform. That's going to be our number one goal.
I look at it from a volume perspective here, right? Because, you know, I operate in reality and I know where my revenue is, and I want to hire people, but I also understand that like training, all of that stuff is an, you know, an issue, and there's a ramp up period for that. So it's like where I'm the most excited about is, you know, how do I find the right tech partners in some other areas that can help me scale operationally? Because as I'm out here and actively prospecting, I'm hoping to get that volume-based shipper, right? At the end of the day, where it's like, hey, man, we got 10 loads a day, 15 loads a day, whatever that is out there across the country. And that might happen and fall on my plate before I have the manpower on staff that can actively manage it, right? So it's like, where's that alternative? Where's that next step? Or maybe you're inside of a growing organization and your customer's like, hey, I need you to take more volume. I need you to take more volume, or you're going to get kicked out of network. You know, that's a very real thing that comes on out there with some of those enterprise shippers. So it's like, where are those tools? I don't want to call it a Band-Aid or a stopgap or anything like that, but what are those tools that we can invest in to where it's like there's like an ROI almost instantly, where it's like I don't have to maybe train them to, you know, differentiate between a reefer or drive in or whatever equipment type, whatever load details, and you can implement that and see something early on from that.
It's a great point. I mean, you also asked what are the obstacles that we face. Like, I think so there were some early obstacles. Now that we're really kind of scaling, I think one of the things that we're seeing, funny enough, is I think there's of course a lot of great freight tech companies and a lot of whom have been on the show, right? But there's also, as I don't think anyone's going to deny, there's a lot of like not so great freight tech companies who've sold, millions of dollars worth of product, right? And what we found is that sometimes our customers or our prospective customers, they've been burned by these providers who sold them on a dream and the ROI was never there, right? So we're in a fortunate position that the ROI from our product tends to be pretty obvious. It tends to be saying, hey, like if you've got a shipper who's going to give you 10 more loads a day, instead of bringing on another person who, by the way, now you need to manage that person, you need to train them, you need to kind of, of course, monitor their development. And you need to make sure they're servicing your freight accurately. Instead of bringing that person on, bring on a pre-trained AI that already knows what the difference is between a reefer and a flatbed and knows how to negotiate and knows how you like to sell your freight. So that's kind of how we think about it. I think typically what we find is that, that it's might be a Band-Aid solution, but it grows beyond that where, okay, I've got those 10 loads per day. Okay, now that I know I can trust FleetWorks to handle those loads, let me go and get more shippers. And, for effectively a almost no or marginal extra cost, FleetWorks is helping me service that freight, where otherwise I would have had to pay someone, 40 to 70K to help me run this business.
No, I mean, and this comes as a shock to some individuals who have always worked for a company or, maybe they've had a bunch of VC funding where they never actually needed revenue. But in the real world, you need revenue to be able to hire people. And if you don't have revenue, maybe you're, put yourself in this position. And this is the position that I've worked in. I've bootstrapped my companies up. All right. So I've gone from $0 to where I am today. And guess what, you guys? You get stretched very, very thin. And a lot of times you're getting pulled in multiple different directions. And there is no perfect, hey, it was a 6-month ramp up with the shipper. And then all of a sudden it was great. And they only made us take 1 load a day. Like you're going to go from 0 to 100 in a lot of scenarios out here when you're growing and scaling. And you know what? Here's another thing. Maybe you need to stack some money in the bank so you can make some other strategic moves inside of your business. Maybe buying a building is in your, or there's some other investments inside of your company. And that money coming in, that revenue coming in is not now designed to hire people, So these are very real scenarios most founders are going to find themselves in if you're actually building a business and you're not just sitting behind your laptop and posting about how you have this company that doesn't actually exist. So it's like, this is where a lot of these scenarios, Paul, that I'm hearing now is really opening up my mind and my eyes to a lot of, future situations that we're going to be in, right? Maybe it's like, hey, we don't have the money, or maybe we have the money to hire somebody, but like we want to stack 8 months or 12 months of somebody's salary, or maybe now this gives us an idea of like an avenue to where we can stack 2 people's 12-month salaries in our bank account before we hire them and deploy them. So like this is like a stepping stone and then something that our people can utilize out there, right? Because again, in a perfect world, you guys, you have all this money to operate with. You never have any challenges in business. You're all driving Ferraris and everything else and nothing ever goes wrong. But, again, I operate in the real world and I know how hard it is to build a business. And that's why it's like, I'm very high on a lot of these products. And then, and then hearing about yours too, man, is like, hey, this is a great tool to implement to where, maybe instead of hiring a carrier sales rep, you can hire another customer sales rep to put another more revenue focused seat, fill that up and everything else, man. So that's where my mind goes with a lot of this.
I think that's right. So like what we see with AI and how it changes how companies think about their workforces we're in some ways we're actually kind of like a miniature version of this. So I think you've got this cohort of startups who realize that you no longer need to build a 100 person, 200 person team to go out and build something amazing. We just hire literally the best engineers that we could possibly hire. All the engineers on our team are former founders and CTOs themselves. So Really kind of when you're working with us, you're working with sort of a super elite group of both operators, but also technologists. And we use AI to make those people hyper efficient and make someone who's already worth 2 or 3 times a normal engineer worth 10 times a normal engineer. Yeah. The same principle applies to brokerage. If you are someone who is an incredible freight broker, who has a ton of relationships with carriers, with shippers, who knows how to service freight, you're going to be able to use FleetWorks to become even better at your job. Like you're just going to be able to do even more. And so I think a freight brokerage of the future may not be, especially like a large one, may not be an army of people, but rather like a more sort of like elite strike force that can serve and target and fix very small issues, as opposed to saying, hey, we need to, the math is no longer 10 loads per day, one head. The math is now maybe 50 loads a day, one head. That person can now actually go out and do a lot more with their time. Frankly, actually probably make more money too. If you're a great broker, you're going to make more money with our product.
And that's exactly where my mind goes, right? I said this on yesterday's show, and I say this a lot, right? Like I will never have cap commissions inside of my brokerage. I want absolute killers out there, but I want to arm them with the right tools where they can maximize their efforts to make themselves as much money as humanly possible. And you know, you're right, man. I think like where the future of freight is, you know, I'm never going to say we automate everything, but I think like 95% of my day should be automated at the end of it, right? And that's where it's like I want to plug in those right tools. And I just think like freight brokerage will always be there, but the way that it's done is going to look vastly different, right? And that's where it's like, you know, your operations will always be a part of it. There's going to be certain components of it, but why not? What used to take maybe 1,000 people in the traditional sense, maybe you can get it done with 100, and then those other 500-600 people, you can plug them into different roles inside of your organization. You know, like one thing that I'm high on is, you know, I'm not going to talk about this publicly because I can't, but like there's a lot of things that I envision my brokerage doing in the future that it's going to change the landscape, where I'm going to be able to rely on the blocking and tackling that I was raised on, but also implement some of the newer version and the newer technology that's out there, where I can service my customers and carriers at a level that most people can't even fathom.
Totally. Yeah. I think if you're a broker right now, I think you need to think about, hey, how do I hire the best people? How do I become Delta Force? Not how do I become a mammoth army? Your goal should be, hey, how do I hire 10 people who are going to just go absolutely crush it?
I look at it like this, Paul. How do you hire the right 10 people as opposed to bringing in 50, hoping 10 work out and identify themselves? I think this gets you more targeted in who you're going to hire. And this lets you be more picky, right? Because I feel like, you know, again, back to that example of like, hey, I just landed this enterprise account. We need to put bodies in seats. Now it's like, no, we don't need to do that. Let's utilize our tech stack. Let's find the right 10 people now instead of bringing on 50 and then hoping 10 work out. Like, I think this is where it's like the hiring and team building can fundamentally change for the better. So you're getting the right people in the right seats. And some of you might, you know, take this the wrong way, but I believe in a meritocracy, you guys. Like, I believe that you are rewarded for the work that you perform, not because you have a pulse. All right. And I think like that is where things are going to inevitably shift, where if you're a killer and you're a high performer, you're always going to be employed. But I feel like the days of you floating by and collecting a salary are kind of limited from that regard, because it's like if you and that's why I say when it hire the right 10 people, if you're the right person for a job, you're going to flourish no matter what. But if you're that person who's kind of like just floating by for retirement, I think it's going to be very hard to justify hiring those individuals anymore.
I agree. And actually you kind of had me thinking is like how might I as a broker change like the questions I ask when I'm interviewing people. I think a pretty easy way to even just get started to say, hey, tell me about how you use ChatGPT in your personal life or in your past job. I think assessing people's comfort and creativity with using AI tools, even something super basic, like, oh yeah, you know, I've used it to rewrite an email, or yeah, when I have a question, I like do research on ChatGPT, right? Getting people who their first instinct is to use AI for challenges probably is a good way to start vetting folks.
I love it, man. Paul, I got to be cognizant of your time. I know you got a busy day ahead of you, man. How does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you got going on, man?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me. My email is paul@fleetworks.ai. I'm not going to give out the emails of my whole team, but once you reach out to me, you can talk to anyone on the team. A few of our customers have been on this show. Our customers are a lot of our customers are listed on our site. So if you know folks at those companies, don't hesitate to reach out. I don't need to get in the way of that. We really have a lot of customer love and have had a lot of great feedback. So please chat with anyone you know in the industry using us. And as always, we're here to help. So thank you so much for having me, Chris.
No, absolutely, man. And if you guys can't find Paul or FleetWorks or for whatever reason, hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in direct contact with them. But that is going to be it for today. We got more guests coming on. As always, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show. If you're feeling really ambitious after this one, which you should, rank the show on iTunes and Spotify, because that's how your network is going to see value as well. Because if you saw it, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.